Assalamu alaikum students. Hope you all are fine and taking care of yourself and your families. It is our first lecture that is about consumer preferences and utility analysis. We have learned that there are two economic agents, producer and consumer. The objective of producer is to maximize profit, while the objective of consumer is to maximize utility. Utility is the ability of good to satisfy human want. It is relative and subjective term. It deals with mental satisfaction of individual and it varies with time, place and person. Utility of commodity never remains same for all individuals. Consumer attain equilibrium when he allocate all of his income in such a way that maximizes his utility, given the prices of goods and services. Means consumer optimizes by choosing the best alternative out of whatever alternatives are available. Why individuals have to choose? Because the resources individuals or consumer have are limited, but the wants or needs are unlimited. Therefore, individuals have to choose those combinations that maximize their utility. The total utility that individuals attain is the sum of all utilities that individuals receive from the consumption of various goods and services. This is total utility received from nth commodity. U1 utility received from the consumption of first unit. U2 is the utility received from the consumption of second unit. U3 is the utility received from the consumption of third unit and up to nth unit. Let's suppose individual is consuming 4 units. The first unit, from first unit individual receive 50 utils. From first unit. It means here I am quantifying the level of utility in terms of utils. We are considering cardinal utility approach. U1 is 50, utility received from the consumption of first unit. U2, the utility received from the consumption of second unit is 40. Utility received from the consumption of third unit is 32 and utility received from the consumption of fourth unit is 28. Okay, these are utility received from the consumption of first, second, third and fourth unit. Here we are assuming that individual is consuming 4 units. It means the total utility that individual is receiving equals to 150. 150 is the total utility that individual receive from the consumption of 4 units. What about the marginal utility? Marginal utility is the extra utility received from consuming one additional unit of the good per unit of time while holding constant the quantity consumed of all other commodity. In this case, these are the marginal utilities. It shows the marginal utilities. Marginal utility of first unit, second unit, third unit and fourth unit. So we can say that total utility is the sum of marginal utility that individuals receive from the consumption of goods and services. Marginal utility might be positive, zero, or negative. With the consumption of an additional unit, if total utility increases, means marginal utility is positive. The additional unit gives individual satisfaction, positive satisfaction. But in contrast, if total utility decreases with the consumption of an additional unit, means marginal utility is negative. Additional unit gives individual dissatisfaction, therefore its total utility declines. The third case is if, with the consumption of an additional unit, total utility remains unchanged. It means individual is receiving neither positive utility nor negative. The additional unit gives individual nothing. Its marginal utility is zero. When we study the consumer behavior, the two approaches are very common, the cardinal utility approach and the ordinal utility approach. The cardinal utility approach that we have discussed earlier in the class and the ordinal utility approach, that is the main topic of our today's lecture. Cardinal utility approach was propounded by Marshall, while the ordinal utility approach is propounded by Hicks and Allen, and it is also known as indifferent curve analysis. In cardinal utility, individual can attach a specific value or number of utils for consuming each quantity of goods or basket of goods. Util are the arbitrary unit of measurement of utility. In contrast to cardinal utility, ordinal utility only ranks utility received from consuming various amount of goods and basket of goods. It is much weaker notion than the cardinal utility because it only requires that consumer be able to rank basket of goods in the order of his or her preferences. In ordinal utility, we only say that individual must have an ability to rank different consumption bundle according to his or her preference. It specifies that consuming 2 units of X gives individual more utility than when consuming 1 unit of X. It does not specify exactly how much additional utility the second unit of X provides. But in cardinal utility, we have to assume very strict assumption that individuals have an ability to quantify the level of satisfaction or level of utility. These are some notations with which you are already familiar. X is greater than Y. X and Y are two consumption bundle. We are saying X is greater than Y means both elements of bundle X greater than Y. In bundle X we have 2 and 4. In bundle Y we have 1 and 3. 2 is greater than 1. 4 is greater than 3. Both element of X is greater than the elements of Y. X is greater than equals to Y means one element of X should be greater than Y. Here we can see that 2 is greater than 1, 4 is equals to 4. These two elements are exactly same, and these two elements, 2 is greater than 1, X is greater than equals to Y. When we study these notation in preference and difference relation, we use little bit different sign, and we say that X is at least as good as Y. Here we are not saying that X is greater than or equals to Y. We are saying X is at least as good as Y, means X is either superior to Y or X or Y may be indifferent. But X cannot be inferior to Y. Again, X is superior to Y. X is strictly preferred. This sign shows strict preferences. X is strictly preferred to Y. And this notation shows that X and Y are indifferent to one another. Both bundles are indifferent to one another means both bundle gives individual a same level of satisfaction. Therefore, individual or consumer is indifferent between X and Y. Here, consumer preferred X, then Y. Okay. The consumer is assumed to have preferences on the consumption bundle in X. When we write X is at least as good as Y. Here again we are using the notation X is at least as good as Y. What we need here, we want preferences to order the set of bundle, and we need a certain type of preferences, well-behaved preferences. Therefore, we need to assume that they satisfy certain standard properties, so we can get a desired result, or we can optimize the utility level. These assumptions includes, first of all, rationality. What is rationality? We have already discussed in the class. Rationality means with the given available relevant information, individual or consumer take decisions that maximize his utility, or individual choose a best combination among all the available combinations. To ensure rationality, we assume completeness, consistency, reflexivity. These three assumptions together ensures rational behavior of individual. Completeness means for all X and Y, either X is at least as good as Y or Y is at least as good as X or both. What does it mean? X is at least as good as Y, Y is at least as good as X. Means consumer must have complete information about each consumption bundle. An individual have preferences that ranks different consumption bundle. The next one is consistency. Consistent behavior means If consumer prefer X to Y in one period, he must not prefer Y to X in another period or treat them as equal. Consistency required consumer choices must be same in same situations, in same scenario. Individual behave in the same manner when he or she faces a same situation. His consumer behavior must be consistent. Reflexive or reflexivity means X is at least as good as itself. It means that each bundle has certain level of satisfaction and there is no hole in preferences map. Each bundle shows some level of satisfaction. There is nothing whole or there is nothing emptiness in the consumption in the preferences map. Individual can't say that he or she doesn't know about that consumption bundle. All the consumption bundle have a certain level of satisfaction or certain level of utility. Another assumption is transitive or transitivity. If there are three bundles X, Y and Z, X is at least as good as Y. This is one relation. Y is at least as good as Z. Then we can say that X is at least as good as Z. What transitivity ensures? It ensures that each bundle is associated with one level of satisfaction or one level of utility. It can't be possible that one bundle give you two different level of satisfaction or two different level of utility. Same if X is preferred to Y, here we have X. If X is preferred to Y and Y is preferred to Z, then transitivity implies that X would be preferred to Z. These transitive behavior ensures that each bundle is associated with one level of utility or one level of satisfaction. We can't get two different levels of satisfaction from one bundle. The next one is monotonicity. It implies that at least as much of every good and strictly more of some good is strictly better. Means more is always better than less. And this is simply assuming that goods are good. Goods are good. The goods are the tangible or intangible items that individuals consume. And this good means all the goods contain positive marginal utility. When you consume commodity, you get positive marginal utility. So we are assuming here every time the goods give us positive marginal utility, there is no possibility of negative marginal utility or zero marginal utility. The goods are partially substituted means they are not perfect substitute of each other. So individual must have to consume positive quantity of both commodities. Given a preference ordering, we often display it graphically. The set of all consumption bundles that are indifferent to each other is called indifference curve. This is the indifference curve schedule. An indifference curve schedule refers to a schedule that indicates different combination of two commodities which yield equal satisfaction. Now we are comparing the consumption bundle that gives you a same level of satisfaction. Bundle A, B, C and D. In consumption bundle A, we have apple and oranges. 1 apple, 10 oranges. In consumption bundle B, that is indifferent. A and B are indifferent to one another. In consumption bundle B, we have 2 apples and 7 oranges. Means the quantity of apple is increasing. When we increase the quantity of apple, as per monotonic preferences, monotonicity implies that when we increase the quantity of apple, total utility is increasing. Because of positive marginal utility, total utility increases. So, to remain at the same indifferent curve or to remain at the same level of satisfaction, individual must have to give up some oranges. When the quantity of oranges decreases from 10 to 7, total utility received from the consumption of orange decreases. Both offset each other and individual remains at the same indifferent curve. These two bundles are indifferent to one another. Again, when individual increases the quantity of apple from 2 to 3, he must have to give up oranges from 7 to 5. And when apple increases 3 to 4, quantity of oranges decreases from 5 to 4. As the quantity of apple increases, individual is willing to give up lesser and lesser unit of oranges. You can observe from here that to get first unit of apple, individual is willing to give up 3 oranges. To get second unit of apple, individual is willing to give up only 2 oranges. And for third unit of apple, individual is willing to give up only 1 orange. Because of diminishing marginal utility. As the quantity of apple increases, the marginal utility received from the consumption of apple decreases, and as the quantity of oranges decreases, marginal utility received from the consumption of oranges increases. Therefore, individual is willing to give up lesser and lesser quantity of oranges here. Indifference curve is a graphical representation of indifference schedule. This is the graphical representation. On x-axis we have apples, on y-axis we have oranges. A, B, C, D are the different combinations along the indifferent curve. Therefore, individual is indifferent among all these combinations because all the combination gives individual a same level of utility. Utility remains constant along the indifference curve. Combination. This is the graphical representation. Previously we have seen the indifference schedule. Indifference map represent a group of indifference curve, each of which expresses a given level of satisfaction. When indifference curve move away from origin, if an indifference shift to right, the level of satisfaction goes on increasing. Means IC3 gives a high level of satisfaction or utility than IC2. IC2 gives a high level of satisfaction or utility than IC1. Let's suppose individual is consuming at point A. This is point A. Here x1 quantity of x and y1 quantity of y is consuming by the consumer. If consumer increases the quantity of x, keeping the quantity of y remains unchanged. If we move from here, this is your point B. At this point, the quantity of y remains unchanged, while the quantity of x increases from x1 to x2. Increase in the quantity of x means increase in the total utility because of the assumption that total utility always be marginal utility is always be positive. Therefore, total utility increases because of positive marginal utility, or we assume that goods are goods. They always gives you a positive satisfaction or positive utility. So when we keep the quantity of y constant and increases the quantity of x, we move on higher indifference curve. Now individual is on IC2, that shows the higher level of satisfaction or high level of utility. To keep individual on the same indifference curve means IC1, consumer must have to give up Y1. Then individual will be on the same IC. A and C, the both points are on the same indifference curve, and both points shows that individual is getting a constant level of satisfaction from these two bundles. What is the slope of indifference curve? The slope of indifference curve is marginal rate of substitution, the rate at which an individual must give up good A in order to obtain one more unit of good B, while keeping their overall utility satisfaction constant. Means we are now moving along the indifference curve. The slope of indifference curve is marginal rate of substitution. And MRS is calculated between two goods placed on an indifference curve which display a frontier of equal utility for each combination of good A and good B. MRS keeps on declining since consumer has more and more unit of one good. He gives up lesser and lesser unit of other good, as we have learned from this. The MRS, the slope of the indifference curve, that is change in y over change in x. This is MRS. Marginal rate of substitution. From A to B, the marginal rate of substitution is 10 minus 7, 3, 1. Individual give up 3 unit of oranges in order to get 1 more unit of apple. So the marginal rate of substitution is 3 here. From B to C, the marginal rate of substitution is 2. And from C to D, the marginal rate of substitution is 1. Marginal rate of substitution is declining because of diminishing marginal utility. As the quantity of one good increases, the individual willing to give up lesser and lesser unit of other commodity. Okay, I will discuss the characteristics of indifference curve in second part of this lecture. Thank you.